Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of my Boomsday project card reviews. I've got 5 new cards to show you today, so let's get straight into it. Alright, so the first card we're going to look at today is a really interesting one. This is the Priest Legendary spell. It costs 9 mana, very expensive spell, but it's called Xeric's Cloning Gallery. And it summons a 1/1 copy of each minion in your deck. So obviously it can only summon up to 7 1/1s, so you're not going to be summoning each minion in your deck, but it summons a copy. I expect it picks a random 7 minions to draw from your deck. But I think the idea here is that there's kind of 2 options you could go with. The first one, you could have a lot of death rattles in your deck or end of turn effects, so like your Sarah and also the Lich King, but along with loads of other death rattles that we see in Quest Priest, because you summon 1/1 copies of them all, and then they die quite easily and you get the benefits from those death rattles, or you get the Lich King and your Sarah card. So that's all quite good. It's not a very powerful turn 9 to play though, because you're just summoning 7/7 in stats. Yes, you do get all of the death rattle effects, but maybe if you're spending 9 mana on that much of a spell, you're just handing the tempo to your opponent. But it does also have some OTK possibilities. Let's just say you built your deck with only Malygos in your deck, Prophet Valen, and Radiant Elemental. So if you just have those 3, obviously you can put 2 Radiant Elementals in your deck. And you play this on turn 9, you summon 1/1 copies of each of those. Then you just play 1 Mind Blast for 1 mana because it's reduced by the Radiant Elemental, and 1 Holy Smite. That gives you enough to OTK your opponent in 1 turn. So that's quite interesting, but the issue is, firstly, you have to have the Xeric's Cloning Gallery in your hand. Secondly, those minions all have to be in your deck already. And if they're not in your deck and they're in your hand, or you've already played them, it won't summon 1/1 copies of them. However, if you have already played them, then you can obviously resurrect them with your Spellstone, and also resurrecting them with the Spellstone after playing Xeric's Cloning Gallery is quite a good way to do that as well. You can also discover copies of this Cloning Gallery with Shadow Vision, so it's quite dangerous in that respect. So although it's a legendary card and you can only have 1 in your deck, Shadow Visions does mean that you could have more copies of it. So a really interesting one. I think definitely people will be trying the OTK, but for me it probably seems a little bit inconsistent having them have to be in your deck, because we all know from playing those sort of decks, you just draw your Malygos turn 1 and then it's game over. I think they'd have to add in some kind of alternative win condition. Perhaps it could be Shadow Reaper Anduin that does that. And you know, if you've got Anduin and your deck's built around explosive damage with Malygos, perhaps you just need to wear them down a little bit and then get a bit less of the combo to go off on effect. But a really cool card. I think in terms of getting value plays from playing in death rattle decks, so yes, it can be really strong, but the problem is in the meta at the moment, people are playing Shadow Walk. So if you're playing a long game deck like Xeric's Cloning Gallery or Quest Priest, for example, you come up against Shadow Walk, you're just going to be too slow. You're going to keep them at bay, keep them at bay, keep them at bay, and then eventually they get their combo and they beat you. So perhaps one for the future when we see some more cards revealed. But really interesting. I like this one, and actually legendary spells I've seen so far in expansion have been really cool. So now if you thought that card was crazy, next up, this card is probably the most ridiculous card. Wow, we've seen some really ridiculous cards in Hearthstone, but this one's pretty bad. It's called Star Aligner, and it's an epic neutral card, so you can play this in any class. And it costs 7 mana, has 7 health and 7 attack, so not that great, pretty standard. But the battle cry is, if you control 3 other minions with 7 health, deal 7 damage to all minions. Now, the card reads with 7 health, so I think that means it has to have exactly 7 health. So you can't play it with minions that have more than 7 health. And then you deal 7 damage to all enemies. So initially you think, wow, 7 damage to all enemies, fantastic. But if you've got 3 minions on the board that already have 7 health, you're probably already winning anyway. So if you play this, you just win a little bit more. Now, the problem with the card is, because it costs 7 mana and you've only got 3 other mana to play with afterwards, it's very difficult to play in the same turn 3 7 health minions. So you have to kind of have them survive on the previous turn, and if they survive the previous turn, it's unlikely that they will be at full health. So then you're kind of looking at the priest class, where you can heal them back up with Circle of Healing and then play Star Aligner. One other instance I can think of where you could use this is probably in Druid, if you're playing with Master Oakenheart. So he summons a minion with 1, 2, and 3 attack. So let's just say you play Twig of the World Tree as well. You get your Twig down to 1 durability. You play Master Oakenheart, he summons a Mogashi Warden, also a Snapjaw, and Hadronox. They all have 7 health. They're all on the board. Then you play Twig, you get 10 mana crystals back, and then you play this, and you deal 7 damage to all minions. Is it really worth it? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's worth it, and not really a combo that's going to come off very often, because all of those 7 health minions have to be in your deck to be pulled out by Master Oakenheart at that point. And if you draw them, they're not cards that you want to play on their own in that deck. So I really like this card. I think it's really cool. Because regardless of whether it works or not, or whether it's good, I'm going to be trying my best to make it work, and that'll be fun trying, but ultimately I think it's a bad card. Moving on to Rogue class now, and we've got a rare card. This one's really cool. I like this. It's called Pogo Hopper, and it costs 2 mana, has 1 attack and 1 health, and it is a mech, which I think is really quite important here. But it has a battle cry, gain +2/+2 for each other Pogo Hopper you have played this game. So they tested this a little bit when they introduced the Infinite Murlocs into the arena. Now this is kind of similar to Jades that we saw in the game in the Rogue class before, where you play copies of the minions, and each one you play gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we saw with Jades that could be really, really good. It never really worked hugely in Rogue. It was mostly in Druid where that came to fruition. But I think Pogo Hopper is different, and actually Pogo Hopper could work in Rogue class, mostly because you've got lots of ways to bounce this card back to your hand. So you've got Shadow Step, you've got the Brewmaster that can do that. You've also got the new card Lab Recruiter, which shuffles a copy of a minion into, or 3 copies of a minion into your deck, and then you can pull them back out with the Elven Minstrel. There's also cards that can fish out your lowest cost minions. So I think this could work, because once you play the first one, which is pretty bad, so 2 mana for 1/1, that's bad, and a really low tempo loss. But after you play the first one, I think they become quite good. So then you get a 2 mana 3/3, and then you get a 2 mana 5/5, 2 mana 7/7. So it doesn't take long before you can get a lot of value out of these 2 mana cards. Also, because they are mechs, this is something you could significantly use with the magnetic ability. So depending on what mechs we see ultimately come into the game, there's already Zeliax, which has got lifesteal, so you could put Zeliax on the board, which we've seen before wasn't actually a great kind of statted minion. But if you then put a big Pogo Hopper that you've already buffed earlier on in the game on it, then you've got a bunch of lifesteal, and suddenly your deck can probably survive for long enough to get these Pogo Hoppers going and more value. So a really kind of cool card. I like the flavour of this, and definitely a deck that I will try. Whether or not it's going to be too slow or something that can work for sure, it remains to be seen. I think where it's going to be a problem is the fact that if you don't draw your Pogo Hopper till later on in the game, you're not going to be able to build them big enough and make them meaningful enough before your opponent kills you. So really cool card. I'm looking forward to trying it though. Moving on to Hunter, we've got a 2 mana rare spell. This is called Cyber Tech Chip. Death Rattle, give your minions Death Rattle, add a random mech to your hand. So this is a really kind of interesting card for Hunter class, because Hunters usually quite a tempo class, and they don't want to be playing spells that do nothing that turn. So you want to be putting more impact on the board, more damage to your opponent's face. But Cybertech Chip's quite interesting in the fact it only costs 2 mana. That is a really, really low cost spell. We've seen effects like this before, and they often cost more, like 4 mana. So being a 2 mana card really does give you more options to play this, because Hunter as well has always had a problem with card draw. So if it gets to mid to late game, sometimes Hunters can be top decking or just have 2 cards in their hand. if you've got a bunch of minions on the board and you play this, suddenly it refills your hand. And yes, the mechs are random, but it does give you that extra option. And you know, with Deathstalker Rexar, we've proven in Hunter that all you need is that hero power just to keep making one minion a turn to play. So this just gives you extra option to play around with that. I think it works well with the Unleash the Hounds. If you've played the Spellstone, summon 4 wolves, and then you play this, that is really good value. Ultimately, you only really need to play this on more than one minion, and you get the value from it. So I quite like it. I'm not quite sure where it will see play. You could potentially put it into Spell Hunter. I think Spell Hunter might like that, because it's a way of giving you minions without actually having minions in your deck, so it doesn't impact Rogue Delar, the legendary weapon. So an interesting card, one which would probably be broken at 2 mana in other classes, but for Hunter I think it's probably about right. Okay, so now we got Blight Nozzle Crawler, another rare card for Rogue this time. 4 mana, 2 attack, 4 health, and it's a mech. And it has the Death Rattle of Summoner, 1/1 Ooze with Poisonous and Rush. Now, Poisonous and Rush is a fantastic combination, right? When you can get that off of Deathstalker Rexar in the Hunter class, it's almost an insta-pick because it's really good to rush in and kill one of your opponent's minions. And a 1/1 with Rush as well, it just means that you're paying literally nothing to kill one of your opponent's minions. It can kill any minion in the game. Now, the problem with it is it's a death rattle. And that's a really big problem, actually, because it allows your opponent to control it rather than you. So there are a lot of classes where the hero power just does 1 damage. So if you play this on turn 4, it's only got 2 attack and 4 health. So they could probably quite easily kill it without killing their own minion. It summons the 1/1 Poisonous, and then they just kill it with their hero power or another low cost minion that they've got there. So it's quite I don't think it's very good. I think the problem is playing a 4 mana 2/4 for Rogue is very low tempo loss. High tempo loss, sorry. You just lose a lot of tempo. But it could be something that potentially they use when you combine this with other mechs. Magnetic perhaps. Not a good card in my opinion, unless they put more Death Rattle cards or Death Rattle synergies into the Rogue class. This one just kind of not a consistent enough way to get the Poisonous Ooze to be useful. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know what you thought in the comments about the cards I've reviewed. Also leave a like on the video, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next one.